6:36 at the Big 550 KTRS. Tomorrow night, top 10 candidates of the Republican Party will have their first presidential debate. That's the top 10 out of 17 candidates who have announced that they are running for the Republican nomination for the presidency. Who's in and who's out in that top 10? Let's bring in ABC News' Aaron Katersky to run them down. Good morning, Aaron.
Well, good morning. I think the most notable in would be the governor of Ohio, John Kasich, and who is out would be the former governor of Texas, Rick Perry. And I think that's the most notable of the top 10 and kind of the also-rans. But otherwise, it's as you'd expect. Donald Trump front and center with Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and Ben Carson and Mike Huckabee, who are also going to be on stage. So notably for Donald Trump, his two most vocal opponents, Lindsey Graham and Rick Perry, the two candidates who've been willing to take him on in the most vociferous way, aren't going to be on that debate stage with him.
What do we expect from this tomorrow night, particularly since Trump didn't take part in the forum on Monday night in New Hampshire? And, he's been the most outspoken of all of these candidates and the most freewheeling of all of them. We've never really seen him in a political debate like this. What do we expect to have the Donald and his hairpiece do?
Oh, well, he says that he doesn't expect much because he's not a debater, doesn't debate. And he says all these politicians have spent their careers debating, so he's already downplaying his own expectations. But I think for the other candidates, it's mere survival. We'll see, I guess, whether Trump comes out swinging, as he has been doing on the campaign trail, or whether, as he says, he's going to be on good behavior. And then whether the other candidates are willing to take on some of the more outlandish things that he says. Do they try to look like the grown-up in the room, or do they try to make a little hay and take on Donald Trump?
That word debate never really applies to what goes on here. It's really more of all of these people getting up and saying whatever it is they want. But with 10 of them on the stage at the same time, none of them is really going to get much time, are they, Aaron?
No, they're not. And that's a good point, because even though it's in theory a 2-hour debate with 10 people on stage and quick answers and 30-second rebuttals, even though, as you say, the format tends to break down the longer the night wears on, it is going to be tough to get beyond the talking points that each candidate is undoubtedly bringing with them. And that's, works two ways. Either they just look at it as a way to get out their talking points or their nifty one-liners that they're trying out, or for some who are on the bottom tier, you could see it as their way to grab some headlines, get some attention, and get the ball rolling for what's going to be a long rest of summer. Think about who's near the bottom of the list. John Kasich, Chris Christie. He certainly has enough bombast in him to take on Donald Trump if he wants to.
Yeah.
But they have to make that calculation. What do they gain, and what's potentially to lose?
Yeah. What about those who are on the upper tier, like Jeb Bush? He kind of made a few stumbles in the forum yesterday. What does he need to do, and what does he need to prove tomorrow?
To some, he needs to do absolutely nothing. Just show up, don't get into the fray, and sort of give off this image of, all right, well, if you want a sparring partner, fine, go with Donald Trump. But if you want a grown-up statesman who's done this before, well, then I'm your man. And to some in Jeb Bush's camp, they're kind of loving the presence, the continued presence of Donald Trump, because it provides a good foil, a good contrast for their candidate, the longer that he's out there just saying things.
However, Bush got into a little bit of hot water himself yesterday with some remarks about women's health in this country. He was talking to the Southern Baptist Convention in Nashville, and the Republicans are all hyped up about Planned Parenthood because of these deceptively edited videos that are being shown over and over again. But Bush said yesterday that I'm not sure we need $500 million in funding for women's health programs. And this is a time when the Republicans are trying to narrow the gender gap because they did not do well with women in the last couple of elections, and it's very likely that they'll be facing a female candidate in 2016 in Hillary Clinton. This is the sort of stuff that they have to avoid saying, isn't it, Aaron?
Well, I think so. It was, fodder for Hillary Clinton's campaign. She immediately tweeted at Jeb Bush to say that he is unequivocally wrong, and then she went on the attack last night to say that whether he meant to say Planned Parenthood or whether he meant to say women's health generally. She said that's the kind of doublespeak that we're getting from the Bush campaign and from Republican candidates in general. And the Bush campaign tried to clarify that he meant to say, Planned Parenthood, not just women's health, but to Hillary Clinton, there's no difference. If you talk about women's health, you talk about Planned Parenthood and vice versa. And it was just the kind of gaffe that all the candidates on that debate stage tomorrow night are going to hope to avoid, those one-liners that come back to haunt them. Think Mitt Romney. I like being able to fire people that work for me. Or Rick Perry in his stumble of the last go-around when he couldn't remember the three agencies that he wanted to do away with if he were to be elected.
Well, there are a number of people who will be in that top 10 tomorrow night who do have the capacity to say anything and stumble over their own words. I mean, I asked you about Donald Trump before, and he's getting, of course, all the attention as the leader. But Ted Cruz could do that, Ben Carson could do that, and as you mentioned, Chris Christie certainly can do that. But my question is, what about the other seven, which would be, as you mentioned, Perry and Jindal and Graham and Santorum and the ones who have no chance here, Pataki and Gilmore. I understand that they're trying to put together their own event tomorrow afternoon before the Fox News debate. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's staged by Fox as well, and it's sort of the also-ran forum that they're going to have a chance to do it several hours before the primetime debate for the 10 candidates. But it's really interesting, just the mere fact that Fox has, by default, separated the candidates into first tier and second tier. You almost wonder if they're not influencing the course of the Republican debate going forward.
Certainly they are.
It's hard to imagine how the second tier candidates now get any real traction to their campaign. Some are able to raise a little bit of money, and that's all it takes is one wealthy donor to back you in these days of more unregulated funding. But it's hard to see how you scrap for attention if you're on a stage at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with a bunch of guys that didn't make the cut.
Mm-hmm. Have the Democrats announced when their candidates will have their first debate?
I don't recall offhand, and up until a couple of weeks ago, it didn't look like there'd be, candidates to debate. But it seems as if Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, maybe Vice President Biden will eventually share a stage, and I think there's something to look forward to there too.
Yeah.
Do you think it's too early to debate?
Well, this isn't really a debate, is it? This is more like television. This is just good TV. I don't know how you can think this is going to be substantive.
No, there's not.
10 people on a stage, and all this rapid fire stuff, and everybody just—it's like tuning into a car race to watch for a car crash. You just want to know what Donald Trump's going to say.
Yeah. If you've ever been out to a large dinner party, you don't remember what most people talked about, but when one idiot said the wrong thing, everybody remembered that.
So, to me, it just seems like, middle of the summer, good fun, as opposed to, looking to whittle down a choice. Because really, in these really, really early polls, I'm not sure voters are thinking about exactly who they want to elect as president.
No.
It seems as if people just aren't even thinking that way yet.
You're absolutely right. Aaron Kotursky from ABC News. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
6:45 at the Big 550.